Alright, today what we're doing is we're writing linear equations instead of what we did yesterday, which was using linear equations. They gave us the equation and we graphed it, so we used it. Now what we're doing is we're kind of going backwards. They'll give us either points on a line, in this case they're giving us the slope and the y-intercept, or they'll just draw the line for us on the graph and say what's the equation of it. Your job is to write it. Okay? Writing equations in slope-intercept form. There's two types of forms we're going to use today. Slope-intercept form, which we used yesterday, which is when you have a slope and a y-intercept. Okay? And then point-slope form, which you're going to learn here in a minute. Writing equations in slope-intercept form, you always go off of this. Y equals mx plus b. That is slope-intercept form. And all you do is plug in the numbers. Y equals m is 1/2. That's my slope. It says my slope is 1/2, so that goes in for m. And then my y-intercept's -5. There, I'm done. Easy enough, right? They tell me my slope is 2, my y-intercept's 1/3. So I base it off of this. Y equals mx plus b. And I put 2 in for m because that's my slope. And I put 1/3 in for b because that's my y-intercept. And I'm done. Write this down and then draw this line in the graphs that you should have in your notes. Alright, so it says write an equation in slope-intercept form, which is this. Y equals mx plus b. What we do, the first thing we do is identify the y-intercept. Yesterday we figured out the y-intercept and we graphed it. Now we do that, we go backwards. We find it on the graph. What is the y-intercept here? 3. It is 3. Right there. Then what I do is identify the slope. So I find a point on this line, which here's a point. Okay? And I figure out the rise over the run. How far down did this go when it went from left to right? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How far to the right did it go? Started at 0 and ended at 4. So my slope is -5/4. So now I plug that into this. Y equals -5/4 x plus 3. And then I'm done. So what I do is I look and figure out my m, my slope, and I figure out my b, my y-intercept. So I'm trying to plug it into this. Y equals mx plus b. My y-intercept's the easiest thing to find. It's -4. Because that's where it crosses the y-axis. Then what I do is I find another point on this line. Sometimes they won't put points on the line. You got to find them. Well, this is the next point. So what I do is I figure out how far up did it go. Which if it started at -4 and went to -2, how far up? 2. How far to the right did it go? 1. So what would be my slope? 2/1, which is the same thing as 2. Then I just plug those in. Now, if you had said this was the point, how far up would this have gone? 4. How far to the right did it go? 1, 2. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. So does it matter what points I use? No. If I use this one, guess what it'd still give me a slope of? 2. Any questions? Alright, write this down. This is point-slope form. This is the other form that we will use today. Point-slope form. Okay, this is point-slope form. Why they use a different form instead of slope-intercept form? It's because if you're given 2 points on a line instead of a slope and a y-intercept, it's easier to write in an equation. Slope-intercept form is easy to graph and it's easy to write. As long as you know the slope and you know the y-intercept. But what if you don't know those? What if all they do is tell you 2 points on that line? So what they did is they came up with an easier form to write when you have 2 points. Now, so let's see the next problem. Write this down. So they give me 2 points. They want it in point-slope form. I'm going to tell you the steps. This is the steps. The first step is the find slope. Does anyone know how to find the slope?
Graph it.
No. What formula have I told you guys to find the slope?
Y minus
Rise over run, which is what?
Y equals point slope point.
Y2 minus Y1, good, over X2 minus X1. That's how you find slope. So let's do that. I'm going to say this is X1 and this is Y1. This is X2, Y2. So I go 5 minus 8 over negative 2 minus 4. Gives me negative 3 over negative 6, which is what? 1/2. I have found my slope. Right? Then what I do in my second step is the plug in numbers. Plug in numbers. So I plug them into this. Y minus Y1 equals M times X minus X1. So I plug in 1/2 for M. And I plug in 4 for X1. And I plug in 8 for Y1. Now I'm done. So find the equation of a line that passes through 3, 0 and 6, negative 3. So my first step is to find M, which is Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. You decide what you want. I'm going to do X1, Y1 and X2, Y2. So that would give me 0 minus negative 3 over 3 minus 6.
Are they always going to be minus?
So it gives me negative 1/2 because negative, well, hold on, not negative 1/2.
Negative 3.
It should be, well, I reduced it. I shouldn't have reduced it. Should be this. It should be 3 over negative 3, which is what? Negative 1.
Yeah.
Negative 1. 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Sorry for the confusion. So M is negative 1. So I plug it into this. Y minus Y1 equals M times X minus X1. Then I put 6 in for X1. And I put negative 3 in for Y1. I simplify, which means I change that into a positive because I had two negatives side by side. And I just rewrite the other side, and there's my answer. Y plus 3 equals negative 1 times X minus 6. Is that very hard, guys? No. All you do is you find the slope, which we know how to do. We learned how to do that last week. And we've used it every time since, every day. And then you plug in your numbers. That's all you do. What's important is that you memorize this and this. All right, any questions? Here's your assignment.